So how will Trump's tariffs on Canada and Mexico impact you and I? As I record this, those tariffs just went into effect, and they're big tariffs. They're 25% on both Canada and Mexico, and of course 10% on China. So how are these going to impact us? Well, first, I think for people that are in manufacturing jobs, I think this is probably a good thing for you over the long term. It's not without its headaches, but for those of us in manufacturing jobs, I think this is honoring the pledge that President Trump made on the campaign, saying he was going to focus on getting those manufacturing jobs back. The idea of tariffs is really fourfold. One is to protect and to build America's manufacturing base. The other, and this is really how I think Canada is mostly impacted on it, is helping with stopping the drug traffic across both our northern border as well as our southern border. It's also for immigration issues to help reduce the flow of undocumented immigrants coming into the country. And then, President Trump has said, how great would it be to eliminate income tax? We're going to talk on that. As great as that would be, as much as none of us like paying income tax, that probably isn't going to be possible, but I'll share my views on that. Okay, so I don't think it's a coincidence that Canada, Mexico, and China are the United States' three largest trading partners. In fact, we bring in about $4 trillion worth of goods from those three countries. Now, I mentioned earlier about canceling income tax. Guess how much income tax brings into the United States every year? It's about $4 trillion as well. So, a 25% tariff on all three of those, that's not what exists now, but that would take care of $1 trillion, but there'd still be a huge gap there. Now, I think a large part of the president's goal is to try to grow our way out of the budget deficit and the U.S. debt to increase growth. But, that's a hard thing to do. Many, many people have done it. Reagan talked about trickle-down economics. When business owners make more, they spend more. The employees make more money, then they spend more. The service providers, the folks that cater to everyday Americans, middle-class Americans, the restaurants, the car repair places, the grocery stores, the retailers, all of those folks are going to benefit, and it kind of trickles down. And multiple studies have shown that, that would be great if it worked as is envisioned, but it doesn't work as cleanly as folks think. Okay, so economists likewise feel that tariffs could and likely will, according to economists, put the brakes on the economy, that tariffs are not a good tool to be used broadly. Economists would argue they're a good strategic, kind of surgical weapon to use to get countries to change practices that we don't like. We see that taking place now with helping with our border security, right? That's one of the things Trump wants these countries to do. More commonly, it's used like in the 1980s. When I was growing up, the steel industry was really going through a very difficult time because of inexpensive steel being brought into the United States. And so the U.S. tariffed that steel. So that's what the economists would say. But the world's very complicated. And in general, I understand what the economists are saying. I understand what the PhDs are saying. These are smart people. I'm not denigrating them at all. I'm just saying things are more complicated. It's hard to model real world things. And if we look at, this is not President Trump's first term. If we look at his first term and what happened in 2019 when he put tariffs on China, we saw initially both the economy and the stock market go down. But ultimately, by the end of the year, both the economy and the stock market ended up doing very well. It was kind of a Goldilocks economy. It was not too hot where it would cause inflation, but it was not too cold where there's not enough growth to provide opportunities, to provide growth, to provide jobs for America. So we had, at the time, record low unemployment. We had manufacturing base hitting on all cylinders. The dollar was doing well. So even though economists would have said, hey, these tariffs on China are a really bad idea, in 2019, the way it played out was, we really didn't feel the impact of it. Now, farmers, if you're a farmer and you're watching this, and my grandfather was a farmer, farmers did feel the impact, particularly in certain segments where China retaliated and put tariffs on some of our farm goods that were being imported into China. And I think that's likely what's going to happen here as well. I think, at least the reports that I'm hearing, is both Canada and Mexico have heard President Trump and have begun to do things to beef up the border to help with the drug, to reduce the drug traffic across both the northern and the southern border, and then also to help reduce the immigrants coming through undocumented through those borders. So it seems like, at least initially, this has been negotiating tool for President Trump. And I think when you're negotiating, coming from a place of power is a good thing. Now, the United States has experienced really unprecedented prosperity over the last 100 years, and part of that is because we have good relationships with both Canada and Mexico. So I think it's super important that we keep those relationships, right? Anybody that wants to hurt the United States either has to go across a vast ocean where we'll see them coming, or they have to cross by the northern or southern borders, both countries of which are friendly to us. So that's a really good thing. Having good neighbors is a good thing. And I think having negotiating power to change some things that have not gone as the economists predicted, for instance, with NAFTA. There were a lot of successes with NAFTA, but there were also some negatives that took place there, some things that did not play out the way that the economists thought that they would, right? It was supposed to be a rising tide, rising all boats. And I don't know if that was the case or not. My take is probably not. I'm very bullish, actually, on the Mexican economy. I think the nearshoring that we're seeing happening after COVID, where people are reluctant to have overseas manufacturing and importing goods in from China, I think people saw that there's a potential challenge there. Obviously, unfortunately, China is also becoming an adversary for us from a military standpoint. I hope that that does not get worse. But it's also good to know that where you're getting your goods and services from, that you're not feeding the coffers of somebody that might use that money against us. So for that reason, I think both Canada and Mexico in particular, they have very open trade agreements. I believe Mexico has more trade agreements with other countries than any other country. So I think the future is bright for Mexico over the next 20 years or so. And I hope that Mexico works with President Trump to address these things. Everything I've seen so far has been that way. And, so it's about making good decisions. There's only so much you and I can do, but it's about our political leaders making good decisions. But a decision that you and I can make that will make a difference is when we decide to retire. That's primarily what I talk about. And that's why I made this video up here, why waiting to 65 to retire might be a big mistake. I'll see you in it. Bye-bye.